Good evening to all the participants joining this webinar today. I'm Marilyn Bo, Program Officer at the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions. And I will be the moderator of this webinar, which aims at preparing for discussions for the Basel Convention COP17, and of course the specific agenda items of the COP. We will start our webinar. So first of all, I wanted to highlight to you the provisional agenda of the 17th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention. So you have the COP agenda on the slide. And the Basel Convention specific agenda items are highlighted in green. So they are circled in green to understand which agenda items are specific to Basel, or that are substantive, not of administrative or finance nature. So today, during this webinar, we will focus on a selection of those agenda items as shown on the slide. First of all, we will go through the legal, governance, and policy matters with a specific focus on the work related to providing further legal clarity and the work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee. So that will be the first focus of today's webinar. Next, we will dive into the scientific and technical matters related to technical guidelines. Third, we will turn our attention to strategic matters that are at the agenda of the Basel COP17. And finally, we will provide an overview of all the remaining Basel specific agenda items. And after the Secretariat presentations, we will open the floor for a question and answer session, allowing you to engage directly with the Secretariat and ask any questions that you may have on the Basel Convention specific items. So today I'm fortunate to be joined by several colleagues who will support me during this webinar today. And now, without further ado, I'm pleased to invite my colleague Juliette Voinov-Koller, who will present the first two items of today's webinar on legal, compliance, and governance matters. Juliette, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you all for joining. So I'll start with the item 4C2 on providing further legal clarity. You have listed on the slide the various documents that will support the COP in considering this item. There are two working documents. The document 13 really provides an overview of the work that has been conducted by the expert working group on the review of annexes since COP16. There's also a draft decision that is set out therein. And then the other working document is 13 Add 1, which sets out the revised amendment proposals on Annex 4 to the Basel Convention that were developed by the expert working group on the review of annexes. So those two documents are for action by the Conference of the Parties. And to support the Conference of the Parties, we have three information documents. Two of them are related to the revised amendment proposals. So in 36 sets out some explanations from the expert working group on the revised proposals to amend Annex 4. And in 37 compiles comments that were received from parties by the 14th of February on those revised amendment proposals. The last in 38 is a status of work, the progress of the work on the expert working group on the review of annexes 1 and 3. And these are not for adoption at this time, they're just for information consideration by the COP. So in terms of the content of the working document, the review of annexes group met for its 6th meeting over the intersessional period. So it has been working for quite a while. It met before OEWG 14 and after OEWG 14. At OEWG 14, the body reviewed some amendment proposal on Annex 4 that had been prepared by the expert working group. and it didn't have time actually to review progress made on the draft recommendations regarding the review of Annexes 1 and 3. So the focus has really been at OAWG and also during the whole intersessional period on advancing the work on the amendment proposals on Annex 4 to the Convention. The revised amendment proposals on Annex 4 developed by the EWG were circulated to all parties signatories depository on the 25th of October with an invitation to provide comments. And we have, as I mentioned, submitted these, compiled these in document INF 37. In terms of proposed action, you will have actually proposed action in the two working documents. The documents 13 add 1, which sets out the revised amendment proposals, provides that the COP may consider adopting those amendment proposals. Document 13 sets out a draft decision basically on the follow-up to the possible adoption by those amendments proposals, and then proposes to continue the work on the review of Annexes 1 and 3. A few words about the revised amendment proposals on Annex 4 as agreed by the EWG and also as mandated by the COP when the work was initiated back at its 13th meeting. So the revised amendment proposals are based on one or more of the objectives of the review of the annex, which were, I mentioned, set out in COP13 decision as revised or adjusted over time by the subsequent decisions by the Conference of the Parties. But all in all, it has always been the same purpose. The purpose of this exercise is to improve or update the description of disposal operations in Annex 4, to improve the environmental controls by including additional disposal operations that occur in practice or could occur in practice in Annex 4, and to clarify the descriptions in Annex 4 to address conflicts or overlaps. In undertaking its work, and you will see that through the revised amendment proposals, the EWG is recommending that there be an addition of a general introduction to Annex 4, that the main structure of Annex 4 be maintained, meaning two sections, a section A and a section B, with captions, but what is new is the introduction of text to introduce each section. Both in relation to 4A and 4B, there are proposals for the inclusion of new operations. And there was also a general understanding to clearly identify disposal operations that occur prior to submission to any of the operations in section A or B, respectively. So these are the so-called interim operations. Another agreement by the EWG is that take into account that Annex 4 relates to defining wastes, and that accordingly it encompasses both environmentally sound and non-environmentally sound operations. So what has been repeatedly made clear in the group is that Annex 4 is not intended to make a distinction between operations that are ESM or not. The disposal operations are key to defining whether a substance or object is actually a waste under the Convention. The amendment proposals also list operations irrespective of whether they are legal or illegal, again, taking into account the fact that the whole purpose of Annex 4 is to define what is a waste under the Convention. Also, the operations are listed regardless or whether they do not or only rarely occur in practice. And finally, the operations are listed regardless of whether they are relevant or not in the context of a transboundary movement. And another effort that was made by the EWG was to ensure consistency in the way operations are described in both sections of the annex. It has to be noted that what is before you as revised amendment proposals on behalf of the entire group, the entire EWG, does not reflect all the proposals from individual members of the EWG. Some late proposals were put forward and were not reflected in the proposals. However, they are contained in the meeting report of the second part of the 6th meeting of the expert working group. So you may refer to these to know what was a broader set of considerations for the group. The EWG recommends that explanations, technical guidelines, or guidance should be developed to further clarify the content of the disposal operations in Annex 4. And this further work, as I mentioned earlier, is set out in the draft decision in document 13. So in a nutshell, and then the next slides will actually list all the amendment proposal. For Annex 4A, you will find 17 operations, which are a couple more than currently. Currently, there are only 15 operations. The 2 new operations are D16, release to the atmosphere, example, venting of compressed or liquefied gases, and D17, open burning, which is currently in brackets. If we look at Annex 4B, the proposed amendment includes 17 operations. There are currently 13 operations in the annex. And there's a mix of types of proposed amendments before the COP. There are some proposals to merge or consequently delete existing operations or to retain the status quo. And this is the case for the operations R2, R3, R5 to R8, and R11. There are also proposals to merge or delete existing operations or to amend existing operations. And this is the case of R9 and R10. There are proposals to amend existing operations R1 and R4. And there's a proposal to split R12 in operations mirroring the operations. There are also 4 proposed new operations that are listed R14 to R17, one of which, R16, repackaging prior to submission to any of the operations in section B, is not bracketed. The 3 other proposed new R operations are currently in brackets, including some with variations in the proposed way forward. So I'll just now quickly go through the text of the revised amendment proposals. It's there before you, and as mentioned before, it's set out in document 13 add 1 in the annex. As you will see, the title of the annex remains the same. What is new is this 4 new paragraphs to serve as an introduction to the entire Annex 4. What is bracketed in these 4 paragraphs are actually how to capture the Annex 4B operations. Other than that, the text is agreed and reflects some of the considerations I mentioned earlier. For example, that the annex, both sections of the Annex 4 include interim operations. Whether a disposal operation is ESM or not is not relevant to its presence in Annex 4. And there's also a little clarification about the use of the word EG, which is meant to reflect that the list of examples that are provided is non-exhaustive. So turning to section 4A, Annex 4, section A of the amendment proposal. So the title is Final Disposal Operations, and then we have 2 variations for the proposed introductory text. Here, the main disagreement again evolves around how to name the Annex 4B operations. Then we have the list of all the operations, and maybe it's easier just for me to let you know that the only operations for which no changes are proposed by the group are D6, D7, D12, D13, and D14. All the other entries have been reworked by the group with a view to improving legal clarity. if you see a bit of bracketed text, and there's not much, it is essentially in relation to the new proposed operation D17 open burning and how it might be reflected in other D operations. Turning now to Annex 4B, as you see from the title, some bracketed text, whether to refer to recovery, recycling or reclamation operations and variations thereof. As a consequence, the proposed introductory text for section B of Annex 4 has different options. And if we look at the R operations, R1 is a new formulation. It does have some bracketed text. However, for the operations R2, R3, R5, R6, R7, R8, and R11, we have variations of status quo or some proposals to merge and delete. And these proposals to merge and delete are essentially driven by the intention to have generic disposal operations rather than waste stream specific or waste constituent specific type of operations. So that's the main gist between these differences of views between the status quo and merging and deleting, if I may summarize like this. Then the operations R12, R12 bis, R12 ter, which are mirroring the operations, are clean text. R12 quater is in brackets. It is a proposed catch-all interim R operation, similar to R17 in a way, which is the catch-all operations for R operations, not the interim ones, but the other ones. Then we have R14, 14 alt, which are a new proposed operations, initially proposed as preparing for reuse, example, checking, cleaning, repair, refurbishment, and from there on, an alternative text was worked on at the last meeting of the EWG, but both R14s are in brackets. And then R15, also with variations thereof, about co-processing in a cement kiln. R16 new operation is clean, and R17, as I mentioned, is the catch-all operation, also in brackets. I'll maybe just skip in the interest of time, but this is the draft decision in document 13 about the follow-up work that could be done in relation if the amendments to Annex 4 are adopted. So it's basically the way forward and undertaking development of guidance or reviewing existing guidance as needed to enable parties to implement the amendments. I'll turn to the next item for C1 on compliance. For this stream of work, there's also two working documents. Document 12, which is the main document, which has a long decision, I'm afraid, reflecting all the recommendations coming out of the implementation of the work program of the committee. The 12 add 1 sets out draft guidance on how individual parties can integrate actions to address their needs under the Basel Convention into their United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks. And this guidance is before the COP for adoption. The INF documents, so 29, 30, 31, etc., are there to provide information on the work of the committee and to basically help the COP in taking action as proposed in the draft decision. So the committee convened its 16th meeting in the intersessional period. It did it in two parts. The first part face-to-face, and then resumed sessions online in the fall. It has considered over the period 13 specific submissions. The compliance difficulties faced by Cook Islands and Nauru with relation to national reporting were deemed resolved by the committee. The committee has also adopted 3 compliance action plans in support of Mauritania, Gabon, and Syrian Arab Republic. And there is one recommendation to COP 17 that it consider issuing a cautionary statement to help Togo implement the provisions of the convention. And these the obligations that are concerned by this submission are the adoption of legislation to implement the Basel Convention. The committee has completed all the activities pertaining to the general issues of implementation and compliance, and this involved a wide range of obligations under the convention on national reporting, illegal traffic, national legislation, review and updating of guidance, country contacts, enhancing cooperation with the Rotterdam Convention Compliance Committee, and the integration of the implementation of the convention in United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks. The committee has also had 3 dialogues during its meetings, so both the face-to-face part, but also online. And these involved the 14 Basel Convention regional centers, but also international organizations and MEAs on national reporting and legislation and illegal traffic, with a view to having ascertaining the support that is provided to parties to implement their obligations and identify recommendations for consideration by the COP on how to improve compliance. I'm cautious that I'm going over the time limit. So just to let you know that the proposed action includes a section on specific submissions. It then goes on to have sections on each of the thematic areas and obligations that the committee has worked on. So on national reporting, just to highlight that for the first time, the parties to the convention have reached the 70% target to submit national reports. And for the first time, the parties have reached the 25% target to transmit complete and on-time reports. So this is something for the COP to be, I hope, well, that it will be welcoming. There's also proposed action on national legislation, but I'll just skip over these just in the interest of time. Illegal traffic, country contacts, integration in the cooperation frameworks, and a work program for 26-27 for consideration by the COP. And I will stop there. Thank you. Over to, I'm not sure.
Carla.
Thank you, Carla. Sorry about that.
No problem. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I will cover the aspects related to the technical guidelines. In the Secretariat, different colleagues cover the different groups of guidelines. I'm just speaking on behalf of all my colleagues, Francesca, Melissa, Agustina, and myself. So we have a group of technical guidelines that were developed and updated for the consideration of the COP. Here's the list of them, plus 2 in this list, which are to be considered whether to be updated in the next intersessional period. So for all the guidelines, the pre-session document, the working document, is number 5, technical guidelines. In it, you're going to see a summary of the activities for each of these relevant guidelines. And for some of them, when relevant, other documents are also presented for the consideration of the COP. In this case here is the technical guidelines on POPs waste, and there are different documents to be considered for adoption. So add 1, 2, 3, 4, and additionally 2 other INF documents, number 7 and number 8, which contain information also on the compilation of low POP content values on HBCD, and a draft analysis of candidate POPs for the future work of this group, the group that works on the update and development of these guidelines. So in terms of the content of these guidelines, we have the so-called general technical guidelines, which is the umbrella document in this set of documents, and then we have the individual ones. So 3 of these documents have been updated to include the POPs listed by the Stockholm COP at the latest meeting. The chlorine plus, methoxychlor, and UV328. So for the chlorine plus and methoxychlor, they were introduced in the updated version of the PBDE's guidelines and on the POP pesticides guidelines, while the UV328 is a brand new guideline. These versions are the conclusion of the work of the intersessional period between the last COP and this COP. And drafts of these versions were considered at AWG, and further comments were invited on those drafts that eventually were taken into account by the working group working in these documents that eventually brought you to these final drafts now for the COP. Additionally, there is this document that I mentioned, one of the information documents on the compilation of available information on low pop content value, using as an example HBCD for the consideration of the COP. This is an attempt from this working group to increase sound information for the decisions on the low pop content values that are normally presented in the general guidelines and also in the specific ones. And the other INF document is the analysis of candidate POPs, which looks into the possible POPs that may be listed under the Stockholm Convention, and then the consequence on the Basel Convention technical guidelines, and whether new guidelines should be developed or updated. This is an area of work which is really a good collaboration between the two conventions. Therefore, this linkage that I'm mentioning here for you. So the proposed action on this group of guidelines is to adopt the 4 of them, and to continue the work towards the review of the low pop content values contained in the different guidelines. There will be an invitation for comments by the 30th of September on this specific item. And also probably there will be a decision in case there are POPs listed in the Stockholm Convention on updating or developing new guidelines under the Basel Convention. This work is facilitated by Melissa, my colleague. I'm not sure if Melissa is here on the call, but yeah, she's the one facilitating the work under this group. This one is the technical guidelines on the e-waste and used equipment. For this one, we only have the pre-session document, the technical guidelines overall pre-session document. And just for those who are not familiar with this document, the technical guidelines itself has been adopted in different COPs, including the last one with the reflection of the e-waste amendments. And since COP 16, there was an invitation for parties and others to use and test these guidelines and submit the results for the consideration by the expert working group responsible for updating these guidelines. This expert working group met online in 2 different occasions, and based on the comments received before the OEWG and after the OEWG, which was similar invitation for comments, they decided that although the comments were of interesting information and content, they were not enough to provide the EWG with the tools to prepare updated guidelines. The proposed action, this item, is to continue the work, so to extend the mandate of the EWG and to invite once more parties and others to use and test the guidelines and submit their comments for the consideration by the EWG, with the hope that those could eventually allow the EWG to update the guidelines based on the experience from the ground, and that the new version of these guidelines would be then considered for adoption at COP 18. This working group is facilitated by myself. Now, the third set of technical guidelines for the consideration of the COP is the working group working on this, the small intersessional working group working on this, is facilitated by my colleague Francesca, and they have 2 guidelines for the consideration of the COP in draft form. So you have the summary again in the pre-session document, plus 2 INF documents considering the 2 drafts, one on the waste-lead acid batteries and another one on other waste batteries. For this group, we have co-lead countries helping with the development and update of the guidelines, Uruguay and China for the waste-lead acid batteries, and China and the European Union and its member states for the other waste batteries. This SIWG also met several times, online and in 2 face-to-face meetings. And the drafts were earlier also considered by the OEWG, and after that there were comments also invited on them, which were then used by the SIWG to prepare these drafts that are for the consideration of the COP right now. They are drafts, so they are not for adoption, and that's this slide now explaining to you. So they are still not in a shape for adoption, but they contain a lot of interesting information. There were a lot of interest from parties and other stakeholders on these guidelines. And therefore, the COP is invited to take note of these two documents, invite comments again to allow the working group working these two documents to take into account these comments to prepare new drafts for the consideration by the OEWG and possible adoption at the next COP. Another technical guideline under consideration in this meeting is the technical guidelines on used and waste pneumatic tires. You have a summary on the pre-session document 5, and also a draft updated version of the guidelines on an information document. We are still finalizing this one, therefore this slide is saying pending. Also, this group was facilitated by my colleague Melissa. They had online consultations and also meetings, one in March last year face-to-face and a recent one online. The draft in this case, since there is no co-lead country, was prepared by the Secretariat in consultation with the SIWG, and it was the same approach, meaning an earlier draft was prepared for the OEWG and invitation for comments followed that, and the group considered those comments to prepare the drafts for the COP now. The proposed decision on these specific guidelines is for the COP to take note of the draft technical guidelines, invite comments again, which will follow the same approach that the SIWG will then take those comments into account to prepare new drafts for the possible adoption of them at the COP18 meeting. We have also information on the technical guidelines on the ESM of mercury waste. There is no guideline prepared yet on this topic, only the pre-session document. And the approach here is a bit different than the previous ones that I presented because there was a decision under the Minamata Convention on defining thresholds for waste falling under the Minamata Convention Article 11, subparagraph 2C. And ideally, the technical guidelines under the Basel Convention, which are focused on waste, should then reflect these thresholds that were adopted by the Minamata Convention. Therefore, we are bringing it up here, this possibility for the Basel COP to consider whether these guidelines should be updated and how. Additionally, because of the e-waste amendments adopted in 2022, the Secretariat also observed that some of these updates should be reflected in these guidelines in case they are updated. The proposed action is that the COP decides to update these guidelines to reflect these adjustments on the threshold for mercury waste and also the e-waste amendments where applicable. And in this case, different than the previous ones, again, is since we consider these amendments and updates of a simpler nature, we are suggesting that the Secretariat could carry this work in cooperation with the Minamata Convention Secretariat. And then the draft updated technical guidelines would be brought to the attention of the Basel Convention parties at the OEWG and COP. This work will be facilitated by my colleague Agustin. Here is a summary about the technical guidelines on the ESM of plastic waste, which were adopted at the last COP. We don't have a technical guideline to be considered. It's just the summary in the document 5. So this document was adopted at COP16, as I just mentioned. After that, the Secretariat took care of translating it into the 6 UN languages and made them available on the convention website. And additionally, the Secretariat also conducted technical assistance activities to test these guidelines. And the proposed action on this one is to take note of the information provided. I'm the one normally facilitating this group in case there is a need to, or this work, in case there is a need to work on this document. And the final one would be the consideration whether two guidelines should be updated and or developed. So these are two agenda items that have been already at the COP in the last time. And here we are just bringing it to the attention again of the COP, whether they consider that the D9 and D8 guidelines should be updated and whether a new set of guidelines should be developed on rubber wastes. Thank you very much. And I now pass the floor, I think, to Marilene to cover the strategic framework.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carla. So we will now dive through the item on the strategic framework. So this is item 4A, little Roman 1 of the Basel COP17 agenda. So for this agenda item, the COP will have two documents, two working documents. The first one will be document 3 on strategic framework, and document 3 add 1, which sets out the draft renewed strategic framework for the implementation of the Basel Convention for 2025-2031. And so this draft renewed strategic framework is being made available in all 6 UN languages. As a way of background, as you remember, the strategic framework for 2012-2021 was adopted by the Basel COP10. And the strategic framework was outlining a vision as well as guiding principles, strategic goals and objectives, as well as means of implementations, indicators, and also evaluation provisions for the strategic framework. And so this strategic framework ended in 2021, and the COP at its 15th meeting in 2022 welcomed the report on the final evaluation of the strategic framework for 2012-2021 and requested the small intersessional working group that had been established at the time to make recommendations to improve the framework and to develop the renewed strategic framework. So at the last COP, there was a formal endorsement about the need to develop such a renewed strategic framework that would be considered by the Basel COP 17. And the small intersessional working group on the strategic framework was entrusted to prepare this renewed strategic framework, taking into account the recommendations that had been formulated in its report to Basel COP 50. So moving along, in terms of implementation in the intersessional period, so Canada took the lead. So Canada was the lead country for this area of work. And so it was the country preparing the various iterations of the draft renewed strategic framework. This work was facilitated, as you know, by the Small Intersessional Working Group, which was chaired by Mr. Zaghloul Zagham from the State of Palestine. The Small Intersessional Group had its 4th meeting during the intersessional period, and it was held in 3 different parts. So parts 1 and 2 of the 4th meeting aimed at developing the draft renewed strategic framework that was submitted to the 14th meeting of the OEWG in June 2024, at which meeting the OEWG provided feedback, provided some comments on the draft renewed strategic framework. That was, and also an invitation for comments. And then the Small Intersessional Working Group had a 3rd part of its meeting where it reviewed comments received and worked on the final draft of its renewed framework for submission to COP 17. So all the comments received on the draft renewed strategic framework is available on the website of the Basel Convention. And recently, the final draft of this renewed strategic framework was circulated to all the parties for a final round of comments before COP 17. And so you have until the end of March to provide feedback or comments on the final draft of the renewed strategic framework. And of course, the COP will be invited to take those comments into account when considering the strategic framework at its 17th meeting. Sorry. So in terms of proposed action on the item of the strategic framework, it is expected that the Basel COP17 will adopt, or it will consider adopting the strategic framework for 2031. There will be also requests to the Secretariat to prepare a report for consideration by the next meeting of the COP, as well as future meetings of the COP, identifying the activities from the program of work of the Basel Convention that contributes to the strategic framework's objectives and indicators. So already understanding which tracks of work under the convention, for example, the OEWG or the Implementation and Compliance Committee, how those tracks of work can help inform the progress made in the implementation of the strategic framework. So such a request has been put forward for proposed action for consideration by the COP. And also the draft decision sets out an operative paragraph regarding the final evaluation of the strategic framework, which is proposed to be done at COP 22. So the four next slides outline the proposed draft renewed strategic framework that has been prepared by the lead country in consultation with the Small International Working Group. So it has four goals. The first one is parties implement their general overarching obligations with 6 objectives as well as related indicators. The goal 2 of the renewed strategic framework relate to parties implementing their obligations on transborder movement of hazardous and other waste with 3 objectives as well as related indicators. Here, it is noteworthy that the objective 2.1 is in brackets because at the time when the Small Intersessional Working Group on Strategic Framework completed its work on this final draft, the work of the Small Intersessional Working Group on enhancing the functioning of the PIC procedure had not completed its work. So the Small Intersessional Working Group on Strategic Framework didn't have, let's say, the outcome of the other track of work on PIC procedure. So there would be perhaps some of course, some work at the COP to lift the brackets and add any unnecessary information for this objective 2.1. The third goal of the strategic framework relates to hazardous waste and other waste that are managed in environmentally sound manner by parties. So that's related to ESM. And then the fourth goal relates to collaboration and other capacity building, with also 3 different objectives and related indicators. So this is in a nutshell the proposed draft renewed strategic framework that is going forward for consideration by COP17. And that completes the part on the strategic framework. So I will then hand over to my colleague Yvonne Ewang, who will present the work, the track of work and item on the agenda related to the improving the functioning of the prior informed consent procedure. Over to you, Yvonne. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn, and hello, everybody. So in terms of improving the functioning of the PIC procedure, you will have 2 documents that have been prepared for this meeting. The main document containing the proposed action in document 4, and then the complete report on challenges in the implementation of the PIC procedure and best practices, possible approaches and initiatives to improve its functioning, which is in document INF 6. The work has been ongoing. It was initiated since COP15, with COP16 establishing a small intersessional working group to identify challenges in implementation of the PIC procedure and best practices, possible approaches and initiatives to improve its functioning, and to develop recommendations for the upcoming meeting. In response to the invitation from COP16, France graciously took on the role of lead country And Ms. Irina Talamoni from Argentina is the chair of the Small Intersessional Working Group. The group has held one meeting in two parts so far, both held in Geneva. The first part took place in June 2024, and it considered a first draft of the report that had been prepared by France. Following the meeting, the report was revised in consultation with the group. I beg your pardon. It was June was the open-ended working group meeting, and so the first part, then the draft report was revised, and it was consulted with the open-ended working group. Following the open-ended working group, there was a further revision that was presented to the second part of the SIWG meeting, which took place in October. At that meeting, the group agreed on options for further discussion should the COP decide to extend its mandate, and a set of recommendations that are included in the outcomes of the group. There were comments received prior to and after OEWG that have been taken into account, and the recommendations are grouped into 6 areas. The proposed action within document 4 is that the lead countries, so in the currently that's France, be requested to continue the work in consultation with the Small Intersessional Working Group and identify further options to improve the functioning of the procedure. So just in terms of the what those 6 areas of work would be, there are recommendations on exchange of information with and between competent authorities, technical, financial, and administrative capacity of competent authorities, transit transboundary movements, notification, decision-making processes, variations when it comes to financial guarantees, and maritime transport. Just to maybe add that there was also a briefing on the outcomes of the first meeting that took place a few days ago, and the recording is also available for those who would like more information on the recommendations from the report that was prepared by the lead country and endorsed by the SIWG. So with that very, very fast run through, I'll pass back to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for this presentation. I would like now to just outline the other Basel Convention specific items that will be in front of the COP17. So as I said before, we are not going through all the items. We focused on specific items, but here this slide is really providing you this outline. So for example, on the group of items related to scientific and technical matters, we have still 6 items there. The first one being on classification and hazard characterization of waste. So here the COP will hear an update on the cooperation with the World Customs Organization in relation to the amending the harmonized system codes to include types of waste covered by the Basel Convention as mandated by decision BC 14/9. The second item under scientific and technical matters is national reporting. So here, among other things, there will be possible revisions to Table 9 of the reporting format that the COP will be expected to review and consider. Together with also 3 revised practical manuals for inventorying plastic waste, obsolete pesticides, and pesticide container waste, as well as waste batteries containing lithium. And those practical manuals were revised based on pilot projects conducted by the Secretariat. there is also the item on electronic approaches to the notification and movement documents, summarized here by e-notifications. So the COP will review the outcome of the work of the small intersessional working group on e-notifications, and will be expected to consider a report from the group with further recommendations on this topic. Next is the item on further consideration of plastic waste. So here the COP is to consider possible potential further activities on plastic waste that could be conducted under the Basel Convention in responses to developments in scientific knowledge and environmental information related to plastic waste. So in light of the comments received after WG 14 by the 31st of December 2024, a document outlining some proposed activities is being transmitted to the COP for consideration. Other scientific and technical matters for the consideration of the Basel COP is the follow-up to the e-waste amendments. As you would recall, the Secretariat was mandated to make updates consequential to the e-waste amendments to a number of guidelines, guidance, and fact sheets. So this is the outcome of this process, of this updating process that would be now in front of the COP17. And the last item, which is on scientific and technical matters, is waste containing nanomaterials. So here the COP will review, will consider the information received by parties in the intersessional work on the activities aimed at addressing waste containing nanomaterials, together as receiving a report on awareness raising activities conducted by the Secretariat in this area. The Basel COP17 will also have two other items under the set of issues related to legal, governance, and enforcement matters. The first one being national legislation, notifications, enforcement of the convention, and efforts to combat illegal traffic. And secondly, the COP will also have in front of it a revised proposal by the Russian Federation to amend paragraph 2 of Article 6 of the convention. Moving along, there will be also the 4 partnerships that are under the Basel Convention Partnership Program. So here we are referring to the Plastic Waste Partnership, the Partnership for Action on Challenges Related to E-Waste, as well as Enforce and the Household Waste Partnership. So here under the phase 2, so the Partnership for Action on Challenges Related to E-Waste, the working group of the partnership has prepared the draft guidance on the 2 sets of new waste streams that are covered under the new partnerships. So those would be for consideration by the COP. And on the household waste partnership, there will be a further revised version of the overall guidance document on the environmentally sound management of household waste. This also will be for consideration. And finally, we have the item on the work program of the open-ended working group for the period 2026-2027. So that would be capturing all the work that has been agreed during the COP and will be also considered for adoption by the COP. So this completes the presentation part of this webinar. So we'd like, first of all, to thank all the colleagues for their introductions, and also the colleagues that are joining the call that are working on all those waste streams that are available now to answer any questions that you may have on the specific Basel items of the next COPs. So with that, I will now open the floor for questions that is coming from you, from the participants. So you may either raise your hand and we will give you the floor, or you may also send a question, a comment in the chat message box. So we have those two options to interact. And yeah, as mentioned in the chat, of course, we will be sharing the copy of the presentation with all the participants to this webinar. And there will also be a recording of the presentation that will be posted on the convention's website. And you can also find all the meeting documents of the Basel COP17 on the website. We are having all the working documents posted. We are still missing a few information documents, but those will be posted in the coming 2 weeks, I would think. Okay, I see that there is a question. Okay, so there is a first question, I think, in the chat from a participant asking, are there any agenda items where you envisage textiles being discussed? So maybe I'll take on this question, unless I see somebody's asking for the floor. So there is so to answer this question, there is no specific agenda item on textile waste or used textile, but we've heard that there is an interest from certain parties to have a discussion on this particular waste stream. So there could be perhaps proposals coming from some parties in this regard. Thank you for the question. Yes, I see the hand of Jost. So please go ahead. I think you can unmute yourself directly, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Jost Overdijk from the International Union of Railways. I know that my colleague from the CIT, another railway organization, will represent the railway sector at the coming COP. Mr. Guillaume Mourawa, he is a lawyer, and he will, I think he has been given the opportunity to give a short presentation in one of the side meetings on issues that have been identified by the railway sector with the prior informed consent procedure. I was just wondering whether it would be useful for the parties if that presentation was shared beforehand with them, either in the form of an inf or in any other way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this intervention. So yes, observers can indeed intervene on specific agenda items of the COP. So it would be possible indeed for the entity you mentioned to intervene on the agenda item related to the improving of the functioning of the PIC procedure. Regarding the presentation, yes, so we have this series of awareness raising webinars now. So this one is specific on Basel. Earlier in the week, we had specific sessions on Rotterdam and Stockholm. We'll have more coming on the budget or more general ones. Of course, we will be sharing the presentation now, but we stay available. The Secretariat remains available to answer any questions you have also following this webinar, of course. But yeah, it's the point is well taken. Yes, I see you have your hand raised again.
Yes, I'm sorry. No, actually, what I meant was, would it be useful for the parties if we share our presentation that we will give during COP beforehand, or not? That was the question.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood you. Well, so at the COPs, we have, you can share your statement or your interventions, for example, on the intranet, for example, for a specific agenda item, but we are not sharing, interventions or statements before the meetings have started or even before the agenda item is taken.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I think there are also questions in the chat, if I'm not mistaken. So a question about the recordings of webinars that happened Monday and yesterday. So yes, the recordings, of course, will be circulated to all the participants of the webinars. And then we have another question. We may need more details about plastics. Is it going to be a negotiating subject or there are proposed actions? I don't know if one of my colleagues would want to address this question.
I can do that. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
this is Carla. Maybe it was very fast what we did in the slides, but there are two topics directly related to plastics. One is the technical guidelines on plastic waste, which were adopted at the last COP, and the other is further work on plastics to be considered by the COP. On the technical guidelines, we do not expect any negotiations because there is, in principle, no work envisaged on those guidelines at the moment. It's just to take note of the translations and of the technical assistance activities that we are organizing. And then on the further work on plastics, I suggest the participants interested in that topic to look at document number 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla, for the answers and the clarification on the two questions. Yeah, so I don't see any other questions, comments on the chat box.
No, there is another one, Marilyn.
Ah, there is another one. Oh, sorry, I'm not seeing them all then. Okay, there is, okay. Sorry that I don't see those questions. Yeah, so I will read it out then. So the civil society, including the private sector, can register for the regional preparatory meetings and share their perspective on a specific issue with the parties and the stakeholders. Yeah, so in response to the Railway Association. Yeah, thank you. So we have indeed a bureau member from the Rotterdam COP with us, Osvaldo, and it's true that there will be 4 regional preparatory meetings being organized in the next few weeks, where observers to the meetings of the conferences of the parties can join if yeah, and share their views on specific agenda items. All right. Thanks for that. Okay, so I see we have another question about electric and electronic waste. According to the last email we received, all the electronic waste now are hazardous waste. So I think it's a question related to the e-waste amendments. So I will turn to the expert here, my colleague Carla, if you can take on the question about the e-waste amendments.
Yes, that was the big change with the e-waste amendments, that all electronic waste are considered by the PIC procedure, so on hazardous and non-hazardous waste, as of the 1st of January this year. There are a few parties that didn't adopt the amendments yet. They need a bit more time. Those parties are listed on the convention website, but for all the other parties of the convention, that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla, for the answer, the clarifications. Let me look at the list of participants, if there is any hand raised. Yeah, I think there is also a comment from Dr. Fehan Alsokinai that says, no, can I say that there is no specific item for plastic during the COP, but it will be discussed as other parties requested? Well, what we highlighted before is that there are kind of two agenda items on plastic. So there is the, let's say, sub item on the technical guidelines on plastic waste, but not much discussion or negotiations is expected there. And then there is the agenda item on further consideration of plastic waste. And for that one, for the scope of the consideration, you have to refer to document 9. Okay, I hope that clarifies the items being considered on plastic waste. Okay, there is a question about what about weapons waste or transportary movement of weapons? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I will pass the ball to Juliette for answering that question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn, and thank you for the question. So the scope of the Basel Convention is set out really in the annexes to the convention, right? Annex 1 listing the hazardous waste as long as they meet the annex, one of the annex 3 hazardous characteristics, and as further elaborated upon in annex 8 and 9. These are all the hazardous wastes, and then in annex 2 are the other wastes. So the criteria that is applied is not necessary if you wish to see whether weapon wastes are covered by the convention. To look for the term weapon, you would need to look at the individual entries in the annexes to the convention to see whether the substance or object that you have in mind, that you're concerned with, fits any of the entries listed in the annex. So annexes 1, 3, 8, and 9, or 2 if it's not a hazardous waste. There are just a couple of exemptions from the scope of the convention, and these are listed in the text of the convention. These are basically the wastes that derive from the normal operations of ships. So that's an exclusion from the convention. The idea is that this would be covered by a MARPOL, and the other exclusion is about that are covered by another instrument in relation to their I think it's I don't think the term is nuclear, but the idea is that it's what is covered by the nuclear sphere. This falls outside of the scope of the convention. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Juliette, for those clarifications. So let me check the chat box. I'm missing any questions. Don't see any hands yet. Yeah, I received a question on the bilateral basis. So let me read it out. It's about the strategic framework. So previous work on the strategic framework has 2 options, 6 years and 10 years. I just want to know what happened to the 10-year option, which was covering the years 2025, 2035 in the strategic framework. So I'll turn to the experts on this topic. Andrea, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Indeed, there were 2 options on the table on the strategic framework, and both of them were kept in parallel for quite some time. In the first draft that was prepared by the small intersessional working group, and then also the draft that was brought to the OEWG and consulted there had 2 different options. And then the SIWG looked at all the comments that were submitted on this topic prior to OEWG, during OEWG, and in follow-up to OEWG, And the SAWG had the impression that the majority of the comments were going into the direction of using 2025 to 2031. So with the view to proposing one option to the COP, this option for the time frame has been selected by the SAWG based on the comments made by parties and is now proposed to the COP. So it is only one proposal now that's on the table for consideration, 2025 to 2031, but of course for the Conference of the Parties to take the final decision. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the clarification here. I hope that addressed the question indeed. So feel free to send other questions. Okay, we received a message from the Just over the yeah, saying that he has to leave now and he will pass information to his colleague in the International Rail Transport Committee. Thank you so much for attending the webinar and for interacting with us and the participants. Okay, so can wait a bit more. Give you some time. Oh. As I said, yes, the presentation will be shared. The recording will be also available on the webinar webpage. And there will be also other webinars coming up. Maybe I can mention those to you. So we'll have a webinar on the budget. So this webinar will take place next Wednesday, so the 12th of March at 2 p.m. Geneva time. It will be in English. Then the week of the 24th of March, so we'll have 3 more general webinars on preparations for the BRS COPs. Those will be in English, Spanish, and French. So they will address organization of work, the HLS, elections, also the agenda items, of course. So the English one will be held on the 24th of March, the Spanish one will be on the 26th of March, and the French one will be on the 1st of April. So that's what's coming up, but there will be, of course, other preparations, as mentioned before, in the regions through the regional preparatory meetings that are also coming up very soon. And of course, the Secretariat remains available for any questions you have related to preparations for the upcoming COPs. Okay, I don't see any new comments or questions in the chat box. And yeah, I don't see any hand raised. So we might end the webinar at this time. So I would like really to thank you for taking the time today to meet with us for this webinar on the Basel COP specific agenda items. And we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming COPs starting on 28th of April until the 9th of May in Geneva. And yeah, feel free to reach out for any information you need for your participation in the COPs. Thank you very much again. Have a nice day, evening, and see you soon.